I really want you to think of peptide therapy as a way for you to get yourself from an 8 to a 10. I think they are sort of new age tools for the new age world that we're living in. Peptide therapy for me and for my clients has become such a powerful way to move the needle. More than a lot of supplements, it's been such an awesome thing for me to be able to try and experience in my life at 44. I am now 6 months into my own peptide journey, and I wanted to bring to you the truth, the wins, what's next for me, because I think I always try to be my own guinea pig and bring something to you when I know and when I've seen it work. When I've done the research, there are certain peptides that work best with certain behaviors that you're doing. So it's really important to take some time to kind of think, okay, well, what are my challenges? Where are these challenges coming from? So that you can make some other foundational changes that need in order to support things. Because no matter who you are, you cannot out peptide, out supplement bad foundational health in your body. Now, I want to address some really common questions and concerns and really the research around how long you need to be on peptides or how to optimally cycle them. Hey there, sister. Welcome back to the Period Whisperer podcast. Bria here, your host, your fellow perimenopause struggler. And I want to ask you today, like I usually like to, how are you feeling in your body? I know that I am feeling tight all over my body. And I've had to have a conversation with myself about consistently coming back to check in. And I wanted to bring this up right off the hop today because I think, number one, I like to ask this question because I think often when I ask people how they're feeling, they tell me what they're thinking. Well, I think that I should be doing more. I think that I should be doing less. What we're trying to connect here is how you're actually feeling in your body. What are the messages that your body says to you? Because your relationship with your body, that connection between the CEO up in your brain to the COO of your body is so critical. I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I think really thinking about your body like another one of your children, someone you care for, that you love, that you have, a bit of a connection with, almost like a ride or die, is so important because there's constant feedback coming from our bodies. And as women, we are so exceptional at ignoring those messages. I will probably talk about some of that today in my story, and stuffing them places and just pushing through. So how are you feeling in your body? How does it actually feel? And the conversation I have to have with myself is, because this is still a practice, I still have to remind myself, like, okay, if I am really stiff and sore, just because I had planned a specific workout so I could complete this workout program, just like I said it was, doesn't mean that's the right thing. We can have a great plan, but we have to ebb and flow based on the feedback that we're getting. The same goes, I think, in your life. If you created, even if you planned an amazing trip and then all of a sudden your kiddo became really sick one day or wasn't feeling well, would you push through and go to Disney anyway that day? No, you would probably bob and weave and move around and change things. And the same goes for our relationship with our body. But it is hard to do that. It is a constant practice. I've been working at this for years. So if you are like me and you sometimes still have to remind yourself that just because you have a scheduled thing does not mean you have to do that thing, we need to listen to the feedback of what our body is saying to us. And I know this morning I had to have a conversation with myself around, why am I going to push play on another weight training workout when my body is already feeling really tight? When your body is feeling tight, she's asking for relief. She's asking for calm. She's asking for flexibility, mobility, space, right? What is the opposite of tight? Loose. So we want to release that muscle. The same goes, I think, with every other aspect of our health benefit, right? When we need to lean on routine, but at the same time, we have to be flexible and listen to the feedback that we're getting, because our brain is not the only one in this relationship. So anyway, that was what was going on with me. I'd like to know what's going on with you. It is February, which I kind of can't believe. Like, we're already here at this point. And this month, I really want to put a refocus again on peptides. You're going to notice this year in 2026, because we are now closing in on 400 episodes, I really wanted to create some structure for you guys listening, who I just adore and am so appreciative of you listening to the podcast and coming here to prioritize yourself and better understanding your body. I wanted to get some organization so that, month after month, we're going to have a bit of a theme that you can lean on. So for 4 or 5 episodes, you're really going to hear us dig into a specific topic. In January, we really dove into sex hormones specifically and hormone replacement therapy, because I've been hearing that a lot from a lot of people. They wanted to know what was going on. We'd had some changes, of course, around the laws and rules and regulations of hormone replacement therapy. But this month, I want to talk about peptides. In the coming months, you're going to hear me talk about some of the other hidden areas of stress that I think when we focus for, a month on one area, we can really start to see strides. So we talked about hormones. We'll definitely talk about immune system and immune function this year and how to support it, detoxification, digestion, energy production, nervous system regulation, all the things. And of course, if you have a topic you really want me to dive into, please put it in the comments, please, of YouTube here. Please message me directly through my website or on Instagram. Tell me what you need. Let me show up for you and bring it to you, because sometimes it's hard to come up with things when I feel like I know the things and I want to know what area you guys are going into. As my best friends, which is what it feels like we are all sisters here, come and bring topics. But as you know, every Monday is a solo cast for me. Every Thursday is typically a guest interview from me. So the themed episodes will typically be centered around the solo cast. Sometimes you'll get some guests that align with that. So that's what we're talking about in February. And I really wanted to dive into this topic because I am now 6 months into my own peptide journey. And I wanted to bring to you the truth, the wins, what's next for me, because I think I always try to be my own guinea pig and bring something to you when I know and when I've seen it work. When I've done the research, I know it works, because I feel like I've always felt like such a typical girlfriend where, I want to hear what my friends are doing and what's working. I want to be able to share what's working for me so that we can kind of connect on these things together. So let's recap quick, because in November was the first time I talked about peptides to you guys. We spent the entire month of November covering peptides for specific challenges, skin, hair, sleep, energy, these things that we run into all the time in perimenopause. You got to hear from several of my clients, the successes that they'd had, which was really amazing. And I wanted to come back and spend kind of 4 to 5 episodes this month digging more deeply so that you can kind of come along this journey with me and see if these are tools that are going to help you the way they have helped me, or you can avoid the pitfalls that I found myself in, and really just get the hope that you need to kind of move in a direction. I wanted to share how I personally feel about them after 6 months this month. I want to address some really common questions and concerns, and really the research around how long you need to be on peptides or how to optimally cycle them, and 7 most common mistakes I see women making, and hopefully some more results for you this month. We'll see if I can convince my wife to come on the podcast and talk about her journey, because she's had great results. So let's start with, if you haven't listened to, if you don't know what peptides are, I really encourage you to go back to November, because I introduced them there and talk about what they are and why I think they are sort of new age tools for the new age world that we're living in, why they fall under functional health, why they really support us. But if you've followed along and you are here now, you can come back to this episode. I started my peptide journey with a peptide. It's not technically a peptide, but pretty close, called NAD+. And what NAD+ does is it really helps fire up the mitochondria, the energy engines in our cells. We have cells all over our body. They're doing all the things. And so when we're feeling fatigue, when we're feeling like when we're not, body's not detoxing properly, when we are not sleeping well, when we're not getting the results from our workouts, when we're having energy crashes, when we can't focus properly, NAD can be, not for everyone, but it can be one of the things that really helps to get those cells moving again. So my peptides over the last 6 months, we did the NAD+, tried some Tessa and ipamorelin for a cycle. I did BPC 157 and TB 500, which is really helpful for healing. It's known as the Wolverine stack. So it's really helpful for gut healing, for systemic healing in the body, for inflammation. So if you have any kind of niggly pains in your body, that can be really powerful for that one. We have it for, there's something I am still using called Glutathione.
And then I am currently trying out a round of sermorelin. So sermorelin, tesamorelin, and ipamorelin are all growth hormone releasing hormones or growth hormone releasing peptides. And the benefit of them behind the scenes is they help encourage your body to pulse its own growth hormone more strongly, more robustly. Because I think after our 20s, we knock down 15% of our growth hormone or something like that every single day. So we lose that significantly. And that's why when you think back to being a teenager, you were kind of more robust and plump. You could handle things a lot more. You slept more deeply. You had more hunger, all of these things. And that is one of the benefit of those. And then I'm about to do another round of NAD plus again, because I love that so much. So these were the peptides that I dove into. And again, they all had a very specific reason that I decided to lean into these ones. So maybe before I go into why I chose them and what they did and how they helped or didn't help me, I do think it is important first to know that this is for educational purposes only. I think you want to work with a practitioner or you want to work with someone who is well-versed in these if you are going to test them out. Because as I talked about in November podcast, there are peptides for some people and peptides not for some people, right? Like there are things we want to look at and we want to understand why we're using these amazing tools to see if they're going to help us, because they can be really beneficial for so many people. So take this as education. Help me teach you from my experience and from the research that I've read what these things are, and then dig a little deeper yourself or reach out and book a call so we can talk more specifically, because everyone is so different. But I do believe from my experience and all the research that I've done that peptides are really, like I said, for next level. And sometimes they can be beneficial for healing and optimization, but I really want you to think of peptide therapy as a way for you to get yourself from an 8 to a 10. So if you're listening to the show right now and you are struggling with constipation or diarrhea or bloating, if you are dealing with cannot sleep at all, if you're having a lot of anxiety, if your periods are all over the place, if you are exhausted after your workouts, if you're exhausted when you first wake up in the morning, those are other issues we must address first, or at least get a handle on first, before you want to use and test out something like peptide therapy. Because again, these are next level biohacking tools, in my opinion, and they are going to work so much better for you and be way more worth the investment if you have these foundations in peace first. So as I share kind of how these things worked for me, I think it's important to understand what my challenges were and what my goals are. Whenever we're thinking about trying something, I really think it's so valuable to come back and be like, okay, well, what am I actually struggling with and why right now? And then where am I wanting to go? So like, where am I and where am I wanting to go, right? Makes a lot of sense when you put it into a metaphor, like using your GPS to go somewhere. In order to get somewhere with your GPS through your Apple Maps, through your Google Maps, or whatever you're doing, you need to know where you are and where you are going. That's how we get somewhere efficiently, right? So for me, my big challenges in my health have been and continue to be, or when I know things are kind of crumbling a little bit and falling apart, it always falls back on sleep. Well, I'll start waking up again in the middle of the night. I have no problem falling asleep, but staying asleep seems to become a challenge for me. And that's when I know something is a little off and I need to dig a little bit more deeply. Challenges for me come in stuffing my stress, which turns into a lot of stiffness in my body. I am one of these women, I think like many of you who, I think we're taught to just stiff upper lip it and move through things. So whenever I'm feeling an emotion I don't like anger or sadness, I often just stick it somewhere else and push through. And then I don't ever process that. And it really builds up in my body like a lot of tension and tightness all over. And I see this as well in a lot of my clients too. And then energy, I think because of these things, if I'm not sleeping well, if I'm stuffing my stress, if things are going off, then my energy starts to tank. And then the last thing I was really struggling with, it started almost a year ago, as I was having some issues in my elbow. It was like I'd overstressed my elbow, like a tennis elbow situation, probably from lifting weights when I really should have taken a break or something like that. Either way, it happens here and there. And I couldn't seem to get that to go better. I took months, like the entire summer, last summer, I took off of weight training, but I still was having issue like chucking the ball for my dog. And I think if you have a pet, you know what I'm talking about, but it wouldn't go away no matter how much of a break I was taking. So those are my challenges. And so I think that's important because this helps me choose what peptides I wanted to explore. And then I was thinking thinking about, why are these my challenges? That's where I love running lab work, and that's where I love taking stock of listening to my body. So when it comes to the stress in my body, obviously I had to take time every single day to start thinking about, okay, where is this coming from? What can I do about these large amounts that feel stressful, or what is I'm experiencing in life that feels stressful? Am I eating and drinking in ways that are adding stress to my life? And make no mistake, I am not perfect in my nutrition. I spent too many nights having wine over Christmas time for my body, and my body did not like it. Definitely have a sweet tooth, so I can fall into those categories as well, especially over more stressful times or more holiday seasons. And although I do think there's time and space for us to be balanced like that and have resiliency in our body, I still needed to take some time to come and look at, where is this stress coming from? Is it coming from outside of me and how I'm managing it? Do I need to make different decisions? Do I need to take time to process and breathe through things? Do I need to change my workouts because they're too stressful, right? And then, is it coming from inside of me, right? Is it because of the decisions that I'm making, or is it time for me to do some lab work, which I always like to do annually, and see where maybe some of the stress is coming inside, some of the loss of function? Because we have a loss of function when your digestion isn't on, when your detoxification isn't working properly, when your nervous system is dysregulated. These can become a loss of function that then adds more stress to our body. So it's almost like being in debt, and that debt is now compounding. That interest is now compounding. So it's really important to take some time to kind of think, okay, well, what are my challenges? Where are these challenges coming from? So that you can make some other foundational changes that need in order to support things. Because no matter who you are, you cannot out-peptide, out-supplement bad foundational health in your body. That's why this is so important. I'm probably going to talk about that again because it's so key. So once I had a good handle on those things for myself, this is now 6 months ago, I started thinking, okay, what are the changes I need to make foundationally in my health? And then, what are the peptides that can support me in this area? What are my goals? Where am I wanting to go? And I know as a practitioner that I always want to be working on rock solid gut health. It is very, very difficult to build health if your gut is off. So that's where I made the decision to do a cycle of BPC 157 and TB 500. BPC 157, or body protective compound 157, is really well researched and known for help with healing and supporting the mucosal layer and the overall microbiome itself. It was also really helpful for, again, systemic inflammation and small tissue dysfunction in the body, which is where that tennis elbow was coming from me. So that became a really easy decision for me to decide to cycle that one, because I thought, okay, I always want to work on the inflammation in my body. I always want to work on my gut health. And I know that I'm having this issue with my tennis elbow. So that's where I made the decision to test out the body protective compound 157, which I blended with TB 500. And that is that Wolverine stat, because it's known for helping heal the body systemically and overall quite rapidly. And one of my other goals were to be putting on lean muscle mass, right? And I knew in order to put on lean muscle mass, I needed to have the sleep and recovery. I needed to be able to repair from lifting weights. I needed to have the right nutrition. So I had to continue to work on my nutrition. I needed to have the energy to be able to put into that. So that was where I made the decision on really the NAD. That's why, I immediately went with some NAD plus, where I decided to test out the growth hormone releasing peptides like tesamorelin, ipamorelin, and sermorelin in a cycled form. So I tried some, and then I waited a few months and tried another. And then finally, I guess I should say, those ones are really well known for helping with sleep quality, for helping with overall vitality, like almost like plumpness in the skin, with, better quality sleep at night, with helping you put on that lean muscle. And then finally, I am consistently cycling something called glutathione, which is a more commonly known peptide. It doesn't have to be in an injectable form. I took that one in a liposomal form. I'm still taking it. It is our body's most powerful antioxidizer. When we are consistently exposed to toxins, when we are exposed to them through our food, through our cleaning products, through our air, if we do decide to drink alcohol, if we are in airplanes, all of these things create oxidative stress on the body, and your glutathione is so important. Plus, I'd had a lab come back. I ran a Dutch a year ago, and my glutathione was low. So I knew that was an area I wanted to support. I'm not a huge fan of taking supplements that I don't need, except when maybe we get to this point where we're feeling great and you want to play. is this going to make me feel better? I think that's where intermittent fasting or different ways of eating can be fun to test out for a month or two when you're feeling good and you're like, will this make me feel better? And I want to geek out on the analytics. I want to try it and I want to find out if it's going to make that difference. So those were the ones that I tested out. And the most important thing before you make decisions about this, besides getting some help and support and educating yourself, is knowing where you're at, why you're there, and where you're going. And for me, having, taking a little bit of time each day to really assess myself, to think about where I want to go, why I am where I am, looking at how to make some changes and running my labs to see what is missing, where is the loss of function in my body, and what can I use strategically to help me get there. So it becomes a really valuable investment of time and energy and money when you know this is something that your body needs. So what happened? I'm going to tell you. In that time frame, I think, and things change quickly and things change more slowly in certain things, but almost immediately with the NAD+, it was like I stepped out of the fog. That was one that I will continue to cycle long term unless it stops working. It made such a difference for me in my just focus, in my energy, in my calorie burn, in my workouts. It was one of the most powerful things. And when I cycled off of it the first time, I was able to find some liposomal options where you just, again, putting in your mouth, putting in your tongue, under your tongue, swallowing it at a lower dose to kind of maintain that energy. And then I'm excited to try another round of it to see how my body is receiving it, how I feel. Do I even need it right now? I definitely noticed a huge difference in my sleep. That was a big one for me. Again, I always remember my mom saying when I had babies, like, if you can get a good night's sleep, you can handle anything. And it's so true. But if you're waking up every night and you cannot sleep, it is such a challenge. So since trying the Sermorelin specifically, I have slept so much better. I have amazing dreams. I have deep sleep. I wake up feeling so much more rested. And I'm also really noticing a difference in the amount of muscle my body has been able to put on as I have really layered in the weight training. And I think this is another reason why it is really important to not just willy-nilly go out and purchase things unless you're a deep dive researcher yourself. There are certain peptides that work best with certain behaviors that you're doing. So for me, when we're testing out a growth hormone releasing peptide, we want to make sure we're doing it with lifting, with resistance training, whereas there are other ones that can be designed as a part of a gut healing protocol, or you can do it, just in more of a healing, gentle movement time of your life. As I'm talking to you, I can hear my dog snoring. I don't know if you can hear that. I'll have to have that edited out. So I think that energy was another big one for me. Energy all day, from morning to night. I had really clear focus. I noticed, again, a significant calorie burn uptake in my workout. So I was getting more bang for my buck for my effort. I think just my body was working more efficiently. The issues with my elbow went away, which was a huge one for me because I remember in the summer, dragging a suitcase around the airport and just my elbow was hurting, or anytime, as I said, I had to check the dog or walk the dog, it was really something that bugged me, and it drags you down when you have these little niggly energies. So a lot of changes, better skin health for me. My skin seemed more plump, and just overall, I felt so much more like myself. And I think we often don't recognize how quickly our bar kind of lowers for what is normal in ourselves. Maybe one day we have a lower energy day because we had a bad night's sleep, and then maybe we enter some caffeine or sugar in the afternoon. And then all of a sudden that has to become a habit because we're still just feeling crummy. So for me, it really felt like it turned back the clock 5 years, and I just felt so much more energy. What didn't change, and why does that matter? I think, again, what is really important to understand with peptide therapy is that some of them are really designed to help you get results very quickly. We see this with the GLP-1s and the GIPs. They really do. You'll notice them within a few days. Like NAD plus was the same. You'll notice it within a few days. Whereas some of these other peptides are more about long-term health and vitality, and they will take 4 to 8 weeks of consistency, just like any other supplement, to really take root in your body, or for your body to really pick up these tools and do what we want it to do. So I think that's having patience is really, really important. With the growth hormone releasing peptides, I think everyone needs to know this. It is very common to have some water retention, to almost like feel like you got a little puffy or a little swollen, and that can last for up to a month. And for me, I definitely noticed that in the first couple of weeks. Typically, it cycles out after the first month of you testing out that peptide therapy or trying that peptide therapy. But if it doesn't, you likely want to reduce your dosage at that point. And a big thing that never changes for me, of course, are my foundations, right? Your foundations of health. And although over the holidays, I would say my foundations did change because, as I mentioned, I was definitely drinking more alcohol. I was eating more sugar. I was maybe not as consistent with my daily walks or getting to bed at a good hour. I really buttoned that up as soon as the holidays were over and before leading into the holidays. It's such an important part, right? Having a regular sleep and wake schedule, getting your body moving functionally, stretching it, expanding it, lifting your weights, if that is the stage that you are in, is so important, as well as regulating that nervous system and eating properly for your body. We've done lots of podcast episodes on this. So I think real data matters, like why I think it's very important to do things like lab work before you're doing peptides, or at least know that you're in good health before you are testing out these types of tools, is because these tools aren't going to address things like parasites in your body. It's really important to understand where your cortisol is, because certain peptides can trigger a bit more cortisol release in the body. So we need to understand how the adrenals are doing before we go into things. And ultimately, I think before we head into testing out these more biohacking elevated things, which I will admit I am absolutely loving and really amazed at the results that I have been able to get and the results I've seen in my clients. Before we do that, we need to lock in those foundations and we need to optimize your hormones and your function of your metabolism, right? We need to make sure that your hormones, your immune system, your digestion, your detoxification, your energy production, your nervous system, that all of these systems in our body are in the best shape we can get them at this stage before we start advancing things along, because that means they're going to be able to pick up and use these tools more thoroughly to give us a way better experience with them. So big things that didn't change for me was running my labs anyway, getting in to see that data and what I needed so that I also knew where to start, doing those foundations, having some patience, and then of course, recognizing that certain peptides have some responses in the body and we need to understand what those are. Now, what is next? What is next? A lot of people ask me this as well. What's next? I believe I will always cycle on and off with NAD plus because it has been such a game changer, as well as glutathione. And likely, I will one more time this year very strategically do another round of, again, something like tesamorelin, ipamorelin, or sermorelin, specifically when I'm wanting to, come back to a weight training session. If you've been hanging out on the podcast for a while, you know that I like to block schedule my weight training. So I will do 2 to 3 months of weight training, and then I will take 2 to 3 months off of weight training. That's what works best for my body. Every body is different, but for me, I really like a focused 3-month period to progress, recognizing that when you are putting on lean muscle, it demands more sleep. It demands better nutrition. It demands more focus. So we need to have capacity and time to give that, unless it's your job to be fit. So I will strategically be using those. And then I'm very interested in testing out something called GHKCU, which is a copper peptide known for really helping hair and skin, especially as we age. So who doesn't love that, right? I think so. I'm very curious to test that one out. I'm very interested in the brain health, the brain function, the vitality peptides. And I have seen amazing results for my clients in microdosing tirzepatide and the GLP-1s. And I have a lot of positive thoughts around that. And I really encourage it for women in perimenopause if they have done all of the other things and they are stuck. It can be such a beneficial peptide. But I think because it's gotten so much, noise, it takes the cake. And people don't realize that there are so many other peptides that can really advance us on such a deeper level to help us feel our best. And that's ultimately what I love about peptide therapy. We are living in a world now that is more stressful than ever for 100 different reasons. And being able to use tools that our body recognizes, that are bioidentical to our body, that it can use and help us move through and manage this level of stress in a better better way is, I think, one of the best gifts that we can have. They really are the AI of the health world. So I will definitely be cycling in some NAD. I will definitely cycle in glutathione consistently. I will cycle in some BPC 157 just because I really feel like inflammation and gut health is the root of all disease, right? If we can lock those two things in, we're going to age well and feel our best. And I'm going to test out that GHKCU. And then, of course, the things that I am consistently on for me, I'm always drinking my AG1. You guys hear me talk about it on the podcast. I do love it every single morning as like a gift to give and nourish my gut and body every single morning. And I also drink my B minerals every single day. I just want to make sure I have those foundational pieces solid so that I'm never kind of getting in the red, right? If you really think about the energy of your body, almost like your bank account, I never want to be going into overdraft or getting into serious debt. I really want to be building up and making sure at the very least, when the stormiest times of life come and I might experience way more stress because of things that are out of my control, or maybe I'm just feeling the stress of the world at certain times, I want to make sure that I have enough, that I have the foundations of health there on me to solidify. So if you don't have a morning routine that includes your greens or your adrenal cocktail or your B minerals or your trace minerals, you really want to prioritize that piece. Okay, sisters, we're wrapping up here, but I do think that it's important to understand how to know when you're ready to add or shift your peptide strategy. This was something that I've been consistently thinking about as I've been testing out my own. And ultimately, I think it comes down to the fact that we have to walk before we run. Peptides can be a part of healing and optimization, right? Things like NAD+, BPC 157, TB 500, these can be very strategically used for helping you have the energy, helping you have the detoxification, helping you have the gut healing and the inflammation healing to accomplish the foundations and optimization of your hormones. But I really want you to think about them as the icing on the cake, as getting from that 8 to a 10, right? As getting to the next level for you when you know you've locked in the other pieces. If you are still struggling to lock in your nutrition, if you are struggling to sleep through the night or get to bed early or even get 8,000 steps in a day, we need to focus on those areas first, and then we can next level it up. So we got to lock in those basic foundational pieces, and we have to work on hormone optimization through detoxification. And then I think the other thing to understand is how do I know it's time to shift my peptide strategy? So if you're already testing out peptides like I have been, and maybe you're thinking, what do I do now? And I think what I have learned is once you've achieved the desired result, I think it's important to try cycling off and see the capacity that your body has on her own to restore its own personal peptide function. Peptides are really designed to restore communication, to communicate and tell the cells and the brain to do something. And when we restore that, I'd like to think if we're doing these underlying issues, if we're doing the foundations in our health, if we have our hormones optimized, then ultimately the body should be picking up those tools on its own. We'll dive way more deeply into this about how long you should be really on peptides for, a deep diving into phasing, cycling, safety, things like that in the next solo cast. But for now, I guess the overall thing I would say is if you are doing the things and you know that the function of your body is as good as the effort that you can put in, peptide therapy for me and for my clients has become such a powerful way to move the needle. More than a lot of supplements, unless we know it's time to use it for correction. It's been such an awesome thing for me to be able to try and experience in my life at 44. If you have questions on peptides, please swipe up, book a call. Let's talk about whether you have your foundations ready, whether you have a hormone optimization, whether peptides and what peptides would be the right thing for you. You can swipe up and book a free call. Or if you're not ready for that and you want to just learn more about peptides for yourself, grab my mini course, The Ultimate Guide for Peptides in Perimenopause. I cover all of this so much more deeply. You can swipe up. It's in the show notes. Sisters, I hope this has given you more food for thought, more tools to be more in your life and not just less on a scale the next episode.